ask and answer the age-old questions. Do these songs glorify God? Can a Christian make music that does not worship God but still glorify Him? Can a Christian artist glorify God with secular music? Must he only make sacred music? In order to understand what I'm about to say, I must define my terms. You may have heard many other definitions in the past, but for my purposes, secular music is any music that is not made for a church setting. If a song is not appropriate for a church service, it is secular. Some styles of music, such as rap, jazz, and rock, are almost always secular. You may have heard that secular music is any music that does not glorify God, or is non-Christian music. While at face value, this definition may seem adequate, there are also sacred songs that may express something that do not glorify God, such as false teachings about God, but these would still be considered sacred under this definition. There is still a distinction to be made within sacred and secular music. The two kinds of music are the kind that glorifies God and the kind that does not. There are many Christian artists in secular music, and I argue that the vast majority of their songs do glorify God. On the other hand, sacred music is any music dedicated or meant for a church service or worshiping of a God. This ranges from any interludes played on an organ or in an old church to contemporary songs in a megachurch. Sacred music is also not exclusive to Christianity. Other religions, such as Judaism or Islam, have their own sacred songs. The distinction in secular music also applies to sacred music. The music either glorifies God or it does not. Sacred songs worshiping false gods are sacred songs that do not glorify God. This distinction is important because music is a powerful tool. Songs have influence on their listeners, so both artist and listener must discern whether the songs glorify God or not. As artists, we must recognize that what we put out has an effect on our listeners. And as listeners, we must recognize this and filter what we listen to. Most Christians do a good job of this. However, the filter is often simply just cutting out entire genres of music. In cutting out these genres, and not taking the time to find music that someone would otherwise love, they miss the opportunity to hear and support the multitude of amazing artists. On the flip side, many others do not pay attention to what music they are listening to. And with this neglect of filtering, the danger comes of becoming a sort of chaff in the wind. In this thesis, I want to show the proper filter for all of you. But what should you do when you have the filters that I present today? Simply go out and enjoy the craftsmanship of not only musical artists, but other artists as well. Enjoy the art on the walls of downtown coffee shops. Listen to new artists that you would never have listened to before. As Romans 9:29 put it, we are the clay of God, the ultimate potter. Let us support other jars as one Christian kingdom. There are many kinds of artists. For example, parents raise children, carpenters build buildings, missionaries build churches, and lyricists build songs. As a church, we support homeless people, families, widows, and missionaries. However, we do not support these artists like we support these others. Psalm 33, 1-3 tells vocalists and lyricists to sing a new song to the Lord, and for everyone else to shout for joy in the Lord. And as creators, we are to make new music, and as listeners, we are to listen and praise God with the artist, whether the song is sacred or secular. Now, I have two main arguments. First, art is a gift from God. Second, God calls the artist to artistry. And after this, I will give the guidelines that artists are to work within in order to glorify God. But how can my argument be summarized in one sentence? Simply by saying, Christian lyricists do not have to produce sacred music in order to glorify God. Now I will dive into my arguments. Firstly, art is a gift from God. In Exodus 30:31, God tells Moses to build the tabernacle and describes what he wants in the tabernacle and how he wants it made. Among these things are the lampstands, the vesture of the priests, the plates, and the tapestry. God gives guidelines for how he wants these things made. Then in chapter 31, he tells Moses to bring in two men whom he has called for this task. He says he has filled them with ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs. God specifically gives the gift of art to these men. He gives general ideas for how he wants things made, but leaves the rest for the artist's interpretation. And this is why we do not know what the temple and the tabernacle actually look like. We also know that God gives the gift of music to others, such as King David, who played a lyre for King Saul in 1 Samuel 16. King Saul was afflicted by an evil spirit, and his servants suggested David, who was skillful in playing the lyre. Now, why does God give us these gifts? There are two reasons for God to give someone a gift. The first is for praising God, and the second is to help others see the goodness of God. He gives us these gifts to show goodness for the good of others. While one may be gifted with mathematical and scientific understanding, another is gifted with lyricism and craftsmanship. And God gives all of us these gifts to give to others for their good. Music is also a gift God gives to minister to others. Aristotle speaks of poetry and music, which is known to us as lyrics, as a reflection of reality. The lyrics written by these artists are to reflect some sort of reality. Some artists use metaphor, some use stories, and some simply describe a lifestyle. Many of these songs are not literal, such as Christian rapper NF's Intro 3, which is a metaphorical story of Nathan the rapper killing and burying Fear in his backyard. Of course, Fear is not a person, and Nathan is not killing or burying anyone. Nathan uses the analogy of his mind being a mansion where Fear has dwelt for years. In this song, he begins digging a hole with Fear, who believes the hole is for burying a song. Nathan then tells Fear that this is his grave, and that Fear would spend the rest of his life in the backyard, or back of my mind, depends how you see it. This song is an excellent example of the gift of lyricism being used to show a reflection of life. This song is about NF putting his fear behind him and pressing on without it. It symbolizes Nathan gaining his confidence. He writes this song hoping to help others put their fear behind them. This is the purpose of spreading the gift of music, to show goodness to others. My second point is that God also calls the artist. Continuing in Exodus 31, God calls the artist by name to make the tabernacle. He tells Moses, "I have called by name Bezalel, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship to devise artistic designs. And behold, I have appointed with him Aholiab." God calls the artist to make art, and he gives them the skill to do so. Why does it matter that God calls these artists, and what does it mean for us? As Christians, we are to build each other up, sharpening each other like iron sharpens iron, as Proverbs 21:7 says. So let us look for ways to encourage, support, and sharpen these artists who are seeking to glorify God in their music. This may include buying their albums or other merchandise, following them on social media, watching their videos, or listening to their songs. There are many ways to support these artists. Now I will show the 3 guidelines for a song to glorify God. The first of these 3 is that a song must express truth. This excludes songs that encourage or teach evil things to be good or a lie to be true. Many songs today express some sort of truth, such as Mercy Me's Even If, which expresses feelings of discouragement in the faith. It is a plea for God to help, and acknowledges that even if he leaves the thorn in our sides, we will say that it is well with our souls, because God's grace is sufficient for us. This is a situation often experienced by Christians. Even King David wrote songs of discouragement and of doubt, which are sung in churches worldwide today. The hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul," is also about this experience. Secondly, a song must show goodness. It must exalt the good and condemn the evil. Many modern songs do quite the opposite of this. For example, "Shoot to Thrill" by the 1980s band AC/DC, however catchy, praises sexual promiscuity and drug abuse. On the other hand, Christian rock band Disciples' "Radical" sings of how the Christian has been radically loved and changed by the grace of God, so he will spread the gospel until death. Christian rock band Skillet, in their song "Forgiven," acknowledges the straying and backsliding and tells of how wicked it is. But then the song praises God, saying, "No one can take your place. There is no other, forever yours and yours alone." After this, it launches into a chorus of repentance, saying, "You have forgiven me." These are only 2 of the many examples of rock songs that express an accurate truth of life and also praise goodness. The last requirement for something to glorify God is that it must show something beautiful, meaning it must be well crafted and it must show the beauty of a part of creation. For example, a song may tell a story. NF's song, "How Could You Leave Us?" is a song written about his mother who overdosed in youth. The song is a true story, and expresses the deep grief and anger over the loss of a mother and youth. While the topic is not a beautiful one, the song beautifully expresses the emotion behind the story. While the topic is not a beautiful one, it is one that many relate to, and the song addresses the situation as a problem that needs to be dealt with. Songs like this are both comforting to those suffering like this and are a call to action to be taken against drug addiction and abuse. So far, the referenced songs have been rock and rap songs. Most of these express some sort of negative emotion. Now we will look at a cheerful song. The song Sunday Best by Surfaces expresses the simple joys of things like taking walks around the neighborhood or wearing your Sunday best. The song is not necessarily beautiful because it resonates with a certain sufferer, or like the rap and rock songs I referenced before. This song spreads a hard-to-resist feeling of joy to the listener. It speaks in passing of suffering, but dismisses it by saying it will all be fine and keeps on with the happy, bouncy rhythm that so many listeners enjoy. This song is beautiful, not because it relates to some hurt or pain, and not because it praises God in some reverential way. This song is beautiful simply because it spreads the simple joys of life to us. It is a reminder to take in the little things in life that are beautiful but lost in the rush. Now, some would go on to say that certain genres send messages that are key to the genre. For example, Terry Johnson claims rock to be the engine of the sexual revolution, its implicit message being one of impulsive expression, immediate gratification, and casting off of self-restraint. People agreeing with Dr. Johnson would say that these genres are driven by anger, depression, and anxiety. When someone fills their mind with these sinful genres and activities encouraged in these genres, their minds may slip from a Christian worldview to a pagan. We all know that music has a powerful effect on the listener. If someone is consuming powerful and enticing messages of wickedness, they would naturally be more inclined to those actions. Because of this, Christian lyricists, even if not writing about these topics, should not write in these genres because of the supposed built-in attitudes displayed in music. The anger, anxiety, and wickedness that has also been put into this kind of music carries over into the lyrics in the mind of the listener. These people say that even if lyrics are explicitly Christian, the messages of the style clash with the messages of the song. Those making this objection would say that the medium of the music affects the message, meaning that if the gospel is preached in a rock song, no one would understand it because of the meta-messaging. Professor David Gordon uses the example of a student in class claiming to enjoy the class while spending the whole class dawdling. He calls this meta-messaging. Professor Gordon claims that because of the meta-messages of rock, the gospel message clashes and is refuted by the music. To these people, I would respond by saying that while secular styles may have a certain background, and while the general driving forces of a genre may be certain topics, they are not bound to them. These people are correct in saying that rock primarily speaks of drug abuse, prostitution, and infidelity. However, they are mistaken in saying that Christians must not write in these styles because of this so-called meta-messaging. As Christians, we are to be in the world, but not of it. This does not necessarily mean we stand on street corners with our choirs and sing hymns. This could mean that we appeal to people who like rock music and rap music by singing and rapping about things from a Christian perspective. A song being angry or sad does not make it refute the Christian message. The world is a fallen world, and expressing anger or sadness for the wickedness of the world is a good thing. In his book, Music Therapy, Alfredo Zodis tells of the different disorders and diseases and the way music helps people through music therapy. For example, Alzheimer's disease causes damage to the brain's memory bank. In music therapy, an 80-year-old sufferer of this disease who grew up listening to 1950s and 60s rock would not be helped by the 90s hip-hop. This shows that we condition our brain to respond to certain sounds. As Christians, making these styles may help us spread the gospel to new cultures. It is easier to listen to something that is familiar with a different message than to listen to something new. Even if the music may sound angry or sad to some, to others it may sound peaceful or happy depending on their life context. If you listen to angry music frequently, something with a note of happiness may seem like a happy song to them. Think of it this way. A missionary does not fly to Sweden to preach to Africans. The missionary goes to Africa. The missionary sees a critical part of ministry. You have to meet your audience where they are. To say that a Christian lyricist may not make rock or rap music reaching a different group of people is like saying the missionary must go to Sweden to preach to Africans. Still, others would say that many secular styles express hopelessness. For example, the song Therapy Session is written by NF, who writes of dark things his fans tell him about. In this song, NF mocks the way some parents call his music aggressive and angrily retorts, saying that asking why he should smile if he is not happy. These people say that it is not a very Christian attitude to have. As Christians, the Apostle Paul says that we are to rejoice in everything. They say this song has no hint of rejoicing in the suffering. They say songs like this are not glorifying to God because they do not express the Christian worldview. NF often speaks of suicidal thoughts, anger, fear, and depression. These people would say that because of these things, songs like Therapy Session cannot glorify God, and by extension, the whole genre. Yes, some of these songs do seem to have aggression. NF speaks of the truth of the darkness in the lives of people in the rap community, showing problems that need to be dealt with. People in this community often live dark lives led by sin. For example, in this song, NF charges the people opposed to his music, saying, "These kids, they come to my shows with tears in their eyes. Imagine someone looking at you and telling you that your music is the reason that they are alive." And continues to speak of the hardships of life and showing that those against his music are unaware of his mission. If someone who is struggling listens to happy music that does not reflect their sort of reality, it can drive them into a darker state of mind because the music may seem fake or too good to be true. Someone in this type of situation would be more affected by a song that describes a similar lifestyle, but with an embedded hope inside. I have struggled with depression at times, and during these times, happy music has seemed quite fake. During these times, I have discovered many great artists that reflect my state of mind. From both personal experience and from others, I know that a lyricist who struggles with similar things is more credible in the eyes of the listeners than one who has not. Someone without the experience is simply not credible to giving hope to the depressed or to people that have struggled if they do not feel it. So to say that a Christian lyricist must only make music that praises God and that does not deal with issues that need to be dealt with shows that these people are unaware of the reason for this music. What these people do not realize is that even though the medium of rap or rock may seem to reduce the impact of the message to them, it increases it for someone else. If someone prefers a certain genre, we as Christians should minister to them through their genre. Some express concern, saying that when making or consuming a large amount of music that is not dedicated to the worship and praise of God, we drift from God. In a sermon, Reverend Tim Shaw spoke about his personal experience with people who have relied on pop culture versions of the gospel. He tells of friends who have drifted from the faith and relying on pop culture versions of the gospel, saying that their personal lives did nothing but neglect the things like reading or listening to or praying from the Word of God. He says these people's lives revolve around many other things than God alone. These people have proclaimed faith and went through the motions of going to church while listening to modern secular music. According to Shaw, these people do not reflect the life of a Christian. Their Bible took a common place on a dusty shelf, and the prayer life suffered. Slowly, these friends drifted and eventually abandoned Christianity. Shaw's argument shows that these people relied on things not prescribed by scriptures to satisfy spiritual needs. While this concern is very legitimate, it is not sufficient enough to disallow Christians from writing in secular genres of music. Christ in Matthew 28:19-20 calls Christians to go and make disciples of all nations, teaching them to observe all the things I have commanded you. Now as Christians, we are to minister to the world. There are many ways to minister to the world. Among these are traveling to other nations to preach, preaching locally, and carrying out our daily lives as Christians, shedding light to others. As Christians, we are to speak on issues in society, and music is an excellent way to do such. Musical preference plays a large part in the reception of the Christian messages. The brain is conditioned over a person's life to react positively or negatively to certain moods or sounds in music. While one may listen to the Christian rock band Disciples' Dear X, You Don't Own Me, and feel an overwhelming anger or depression, while others might be encouraged. This song is a song written to hate, anger, pain, and shame, reflecting the effects of these vices on the singer's life, saying, "I let you go, but you're still chasing." These lyrics are not only true, but they are moving. They reflect the truth that even though we are saved, we still struggle. The song goes on to say, "Go ahead, you're never going to take me. You can bend, but you're never going to break me. I was yours, but not yours anymore. You don't own me." While this song is aggressive and is a rock song, it shows very well what it is like following Jesus. For a struggling non-believer who may stumble on this song, it is encouraging because it shows the way out of the vice. I asked Mr. Shaw about these sorts of songs and inquired whether these songs were wise to listen to. He replied by saying that these songs are helpful for such things and give glory to God. Yet his concern still remains of one being reliant on those for mediums of faith. This concern is legitimate. Music as a therapy is a very helpful and healing thing, and as Christians we are to acknowledge this to be true. Christians today have taken the sidelines and have made mostly praise songs heard on the radio. These songs have a very limited range in genre and an attempt to appeal to the easy listening sound to make the gospel fun. This is a problem because music does not often address the real life problems. The Bible calls us to dwell on things that are honorable, pure, just, lovely, and commendable. Mr. Shaw says that this passage is commonly misinterpreted by Christians who argue that the Christian should be happy and encouraging all the time. This common misconception that music is not to deal with egregious issues is dangerous. This claim is dangerous because it would have us ignore books like Ecclesiastes and many of the Psalms because they are somber, sad, angry, depressed, and express grief. Ignoring these passages is simple because as Christians, we know that we are not to add or take away from the Bible. Psalms often express a sense of separation from God, and many of NF's songs express this as well. And these are subjects that should be addressed in the music Christians make. Recently, the artists that have attempted to address these issues are ones like Rage Against the Machine, Tupac, and Eminem. These artists are very worldly and do not come close to reflecting Christian truth most of the time and have led our generation astray. The influence these artists have had on the past generations is incalculable. If Christians were to become widespread in music, the influence they would have on the nation would be opposite to what the worldly artists have done. Just as Reverend Shaw's friends drifted from the faith because of lack of a positive musical influence, many people would be moved to a more moral and healthy way of living, and would become more encouraged to read the Bible or pray or attend church to find hope that Christians have. Since God gives the gift of art to the artists are to make art. And since God calls the artists to make the art expressively in their own style, artists must do so. Since many people have many different preferences in music, so as Christian artists, we can use those styles to reach those people. Because many people have many different music tastes, we are to minister to them through those genres. Because Christians are to be the agent of change in society, we should support these artists and encourage Christian artists to make their music and to lead people to or back to God. Let us listen to these artists. Let us get to know their work. Let us encourage these artists to be better lyricists and influences on the world around them, and let us do the same. Thank you.